Hello and welcome to Pharma Television News Review here at BioEurope in Milan, spring 2011. On this show, I have Kevin Johnson, who is partner at Index Ventures, the Swiss-based venture capital company, but you're based in London.
Correct, yes.
Kevin, your background, you're not a traditional venture capitalist. You're more of a scientist, scientific background, coming through the biotech industry itself, entrepreneurial skills and so forth. So why are you now a venture capitalist?
It's a good question. Good question. I still think of myself as an entrepreneur, but I happen to be doing venture capital. So I'm exercising that in a different way. If you look at it in terms of what Index has been doing recently, then a lot of these single asset companies, what we're calling these single asset companies, where they basically just got one project that's running with a very small team, is actually what I've been doing for a large part of my life anyway. So really what has changed is that rather than being there in the front line myself, I'm now working with other people and with a number of these teams who are doing pretty much what I've done in the past.
So do you see yourself complementing the skill sets within Index, or are you out there on your own and you're actually better than the rest of your team?
No, I'm complementing the skills. How could I say anything otherwise? But actually it is true, so I can easily say that. No, it's basically, so you've got Francesco Durabertis, my partner, who's come down the traditional VC route, although he is a scientist. Then I've come more of as an operational guy. And so what I bring is more of the operational awareness, particularly around these early stage companies, which we really like early stage companies. We're a Series A specialist, I'd say. And that's when people with my phenotype, I think, are particularly relevant. I think once the company grows, then I become less of a relevant phenotype. But being part of these teams, sort of a jobbing operational guy, I think works.
But to invest in early stage companies and research, you require the ability to follow that funding through into later stage, or else otherwise you can get damaged, is one word to describe it.
Yes. Yes.
And Index can do that.
Index can do that, yes. I mean, we do prefer to focus in on early stage and partner these programs before they've gone too far into phase 2. And that's not so much for our operational reach, because we do have that operational reach. It's more down to the fact that once you get into phase 2 and multiple phase 2 studies, A, they cost a lot of money, but B, this is where different pharma partners diverge in their interests. So if you're working on an autoimmune program, then if you want to partner it with AstraZeneca, they may have COPD as their primary focus, whereas another company may have RA. And so by doing a phase 2 study in COPD, we've increased the value. I'm using that as an example, by the way. We've increased the value to AstraZeneca, but then we've destroyed value as far as another company is concerned. So once things get into the later stage or the middle stages of clinical development, that's when different partners will diverge in terms of how they want to see that study structured. And so there's just as much chance that you've destroyed value as created it. So that's why we tend to try and partner before then.
So your role is really important at board level, more than just simply identifying an opportunity and putting money into it.
Yes, I mean I would say it goes beyond that, and that I'm actually involved operationally with these companies. So I'm always meeting up. For example, Molecular Partners. I'm on the board of Molecular Partners. I'm meeting up with Patrick Amstutz, their CBO here, because we're working on a few things together. So this is an example. I mean, you are part of the team. I mean, our interests are completely aligned. They trust me, I trust them, and we're working together. So it's a bit more involved than
Right.
Perhaps traditionally.
But that means that you're limited in the number of companies you can actually fund.
It does.
But when you talk about a single asset company, are you talking about a one product company, or are you talking about a one technology company?
A one product company.
And but presumably a lot of the companies you deal with, which are at an earlier stage, usually have an underlying technology as well.
Not necessarily. I mean, some do, but in many cases, it's simply an asset that's been identified, either by us or by other people, by the entrepreneurs that we know, and we've created a company around it. And so it doesn't have to have a technology. We have done, and I know Molecular Partners is an exception to that rule, because that's a full build-out technology platform. But there's another case, a company, again, I'm involved with in Palo Alto in the US, where the technology is retained within basically a research boutique company called Ammunix. And what we've done is to keep the technology in that boutique. That's basically I'm calling it boutique is really underclubbing it. It's a technology house, and it's run by a chap called Pim Stemmer, serial entrepreneur, very, very smart guy, and he loves doing this sort of stuff. But when it comes down to development of products off that technology, we've simply created companies around individual or groups of those products, then to take that forward, and that's what we've invested in.
Right.
So it's to try and separate out the technology platform from the products derived from that technology platform.
But if you've got a one-product company,
Yeah.
the chances of failure are very high.
The chances of failure, actually, our experience to date is that the failure rates are lower than they are in build-out when there's a portfolio.
And why is that?
I think it's because, well, okay, so this is now conjecture. This is what we've observed, so that's what the data says. The conjecture, I think, is really that it takes away portfolio logic. The people that we've got working on these companies, if they don't like it, the opportunity cost is so high, it absorbs so many of their productive years as entrepreneurs, that if the project looks like it's going downhill, they're the first ones to shout. So that there's no benefit to keeping a lame duck afloat. They'd much rather use their time on another asset. So basically, they have serial job security. So if that asset is really got no future, they're much better off dropping that asset and moving on to one that has better prospects. That's part of it. I think another part of it is that because it's such a tightly focused company, I think that it's just people keep their eye on the ball more because there's nothing else.
Survival.
To do. Yeah, there's no. Well, actually, they're not so much worried about survival. It's just there's nothing else to concentrate on. I mean, I've run one of these companies. So my previous role within Index was I was actually a portfolio CEO when we were starting out doing the experiment of these single asset companies. And it's actually quite liberating. As a CEO, it's actually quite liberating because you don't deal with any of the fluff that's normally associated with running a company. You know, you don't go to lots of meetings, you don't run lots of committees. It's very, 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 very close to the surface, and it's actually quite a pure play.
Right. So obviously, then you're still in the portfolio game because you have your portfolio of companies ultimately, and so these are your observations. So has funding of biotechnology changed now?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And the shaping of that, because obviously, you know, one of the things that clearly has happened is that a number of venture capital firms have moved out of the area, don't want to touch it, and also we've got the pharma companies moving in, we've got the charitable organizations wishing to take some risk or some form of risk in that game. So looking back over the last 6 to 7 years, things have changed.
Yes, they have. So I think
But have they changed for the better? Are we actually better now at taking products from early stage through into clinic?
I'm not sure. I would say at the moment it's fairly neutral. I'm seeing about the same sort of flow through of products. So there's no seismic shift one way or another. I think it's that certainly the blend of funding for early stage programs has changed. So you're seeing much more now, as you say, with charitable foundations, with angel investors, with super angel groups, and with the pharma companies themselves. So the blending has changed, which I think is a good thing because generally, you know, if you've got people with a different perspective, they're looking at things in a slightly different way, and generally that's healthy. Now, the only concern I've got is alignment of interests. So, you know, it's difficult enough in any company when you have just one or two agendas. If you have multiple agendas, then that can become a bit of a headache operationally. I think that's the only concern I have. But as of now, I haven't seen any seismic shift one way or the other. I mean, you are definitely seeing a shrinking of the venture capital community, certainly in Europe. Yeah. But the ones that are still standing are pretty healthy and pretty committed to doing life science.
Right. And as somebody who's been in the biotechnology game, if I can call it that, do you feel that it's still a secure area to work in? I mean, is it something that can actually yield the type of promise in terms of cash, but also in terms of products that it was perceived to do, say, 20 years ago?
Yes, I do. I think that
so it's not at the end of its life cycle.
No, I think my one concern in terms of the economic health of the industry is the regulatory barrier, which always seems to ratchet up, and that has a direct impact. Now, given how mobile capital is, that's my underlying concern. So it's not whether the VCs are committed to the other funding sources are committed to the enterprise. It's whether their financiers, their backers, just lose interest and say, look, we're better off building companies that do apps for an iPhone. We see faster returns, bigger returns. Why don't we just do that instead? That's my concern. That there's a seismic shift away from life science as
the risks are just basically too high.
Simply because the risk reward profile is no longer good, and I'd rather be in another sector. But fundamentally, I think that it's always been a changing landscape. I think it's good for biotech because generally, if things stay the same, it's the incumbents who benefit from that because they've basically got all of the infrastructure, all of the operations ready to roll. If things change, then smaller organizations can adapt more quickly generally, and that then favors the upstarts.
But can we return to the concept of the Genentechs and the Amgens again? Can we go back to a period when you can set up a biotech company and it becomes a fully integrated pharmaceutical company?
It certainly can happen and is happening in the orphan drug space. There's the capital reach to get to a fully independent company is obviously much less than if you're trying to build out a pharma company. I'm personally not convinced it's the right or desirable thing to do, and that's just, it's not that I'm for or against it. I'm just not, I just don't see why people really want that. I mean, but that seems to be what governments regard as success. Personally, I don't subscribe to that. So it's certainly possible in niche areas, but I think as a general rule, unless the capital markets return in force, I don't think you're going to see them anytime soon.
Right. So just finally, then, Kevin, it sounds from everything you've said that you still obviously believe in our industry, and you believe that there is still a future there, but it will be a different future.
Yeah.
Would that be correct summary?
Yeah, I think when I first came into this business a long time ago, my motto then is that do good, have fun, and make money, and it's still the same. And I still think you can do all three.
Kevin Johnson, thank you very much indeed for coming on the show.
My pleasure.